Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you guys the McCall's Fall 2024 drop that we've all been waiting for a good solid month or so, right? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So if that's some content you would like to see, please continue to watch. So you guys know that McCall's dropped around, I want to say probably 20-ish plus patterns. However, I'm only going to be giving you those adult patterns. So I will not be featuring any costume patterns, any children patterns, or even accessory patterns. I'm just focusing on the garment patterns that dropped with McCall's right now. So I'm going to be sharing roughly 15 patterns with you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. But if you are new to the channel, welcome. Hello, Ciao, Guten, Aloha, Hola, Konnichiwa, Gwaan, Sabonani, Shalom, Bonjour, Terve. If you're returning, you guys know what to do. Quick snack, something to drink, grab your notebook so you can go ahead and write down these patterns, and some of them have some similarities as well. You guys know what I do. I'm going to tell you the patterns that I feel that they are similar to. So without further ado, to keep this video short, sweet, give you all the deets and the news that you can use on this video, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so first up, we're going to talk about the Brandi Joan pattern, which is, all of these are McCall's, so I'm just going to tell you the number. It's 8528. And this pattern is a flowy mid-calf length dress. It has front button opening, contrast collar, puff sleeves with sleeve bands, gathers at the shoulder. And then you also have the circle skirt, side seam pockets, and a narrow hem. Now this pattern is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, it's two pattern envelopes. The first one is 6 to 14, and the second one is 16 to 24. Now all of the patterns come in paper pattern or PDF pattern as well. So let's talk fabric. So in terms of fabric, you can use a cotton blend, a crepe, or a challis. Now there is a contrast that you have right on the collar area, and you need to use some chemise for that. You will also need some lightweight fusible interfacing. In terms of notion, you need 16 3/8 inch shank buttons. So that's a little bit of hand sewing for that as well. In terms of kind of like the finished garment measurement, in terms of the bust, you have 35.5 to 51. So somewhat of size inclusive for this one as well. But once again, it's 8528. I'm not going to be picking this pattern up, but I think it's a gorgeous pattern. I just have a pattern that's very similar to this one in my stash with simplicity. Let's go ahead and move over to the next pattern. So the next pattern is 8527. This is a Melissa Watson for Palmer and Pletch pattern. Now I feel like I have seen this pattern before, but I did do some deep diving and searching for another Palmer and Pletch pattern, and it is not the same or similar because that back is elastic. So this is a pant pattern that features waistband with back elastic, fly front zipper, and hook and bar closure. It also has belt loops and a slash pocket, slanted pockets as well. Now it says that you can complete the look with matching jacket if you throw in McCall's 8504 with this pattern to have kind of like a whole suit set. Now this is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, it's two pattern envelopes. The first one is 8 to 16, and the second one is 18 to 26 on this pattern. Now let's talk about fabric for this one. So there's many fabrics you can use. You can use cotton blends, you can use linen, you can use raw silk, just to name a few of the patterns there. You're also going to need some lightweight fusible interfacing. In terms of notion, don't skip out on the 2 yards of elastic, and that elastic needs to be at about a 1/2 inch elastic. You will also need a 7-inch zipper to do that fly front. And of course, I have a video on fly front zippers as well if you're interested in that. And then do not forget that you're going to need 2 hook and bar closures as well. In terms of kind of like the hips measurement, it goes from a size 8 to 26 on the pattern. And in terms of finished garment measurements, you have the hips at 37.5 to 54 inches in the hips. So I like the fact that it does have a huge sides range for this one. But I also know that you will definitely need to measure your pattern pieces when you are doing pants. Definitely test with a muslin instead of going straight to your fabric. I know some of us do not do that. Mumwa is one of them who do not like to do muslins, but when it comes to pants and a pattern I have not tried before, I will do a mock-up toile or a muslin. It's all the same thing, all right? So once again, this is 8527. I will be picking this pattern up, but let's go ahead and move over to the next pattern as well. So the next pattern is 8528. This is a blazer dress pattern. This one has sleeve variations and attached belt with purchase ring, rectangular ring, and snap closure. Now view A and view B have a collar, a lapel, and pleated skirt. Now view A dress is sleeveless and has contrast on the collar and the lapel area as well. View C blazer dress have long sleeve, and it also features a contrast on the left side of the dress when wearing it. So it is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, there's two pattern envelopes. The first one is 8 to 16, and the second one is 18 to 26 on that second pattern envelope. Now, this pattern reminds me of McCall's 8454 that came out in like early spring, I believe, of this year. So it's very similar. The only difference with that pattern is that that pattern is a jumpsuit pattern, whereas this pattern is a dress pattern, but it has like similar silhouettes, I should say, all right? But let's go ahead and talk fabrics. So in terms of fabric, you can use cotton blends, gabardine, tweeds, wool blends, just to name a few. You will need some fusible interfacing for this one. And in terms of notions, you're just gonna need 1.5 inch rectangular ring. And you'll also need 1/2 inch sew-on snap as well. In terms of the finished garment measurements for the bust, 36 to 52.5 inches. In terms of the waist, 28 to 44.5 inches as well. And then of course, in terms of the hips, 41 to 57.5. So that's a huge size range for this pattern. But once again, it's 8528. Moving over to the next one is 8529, which is a missus dress. Now this is a sheath dress. It has sleeve length and pocket variation. It also features a scoop neckline, shoulder pads, which is optional, of course, and invisible zipper closure. When it comes to view A, you have the self ruffles on the sleeves and pockets and decorative buttons on the pockets as well. If you choose to do that, is also optional. View B and view C have that purchase trim that you have there on the sleeves, on the neck, on the pockets, if you choose that option as well. But that's what you have for this pattern. And it also comes in two length variations, short sleeve or a long sleeve for this one. This is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, there's two pattern envelopes. The first one is 4 to 12 and the other one is 14 to 22. Now this pattern reminds me of New Look 6176. I have that pattern and it is a very old pattern. So if you do not have New Look 6176 and make some slight modifications to it, you can definitely get this pattern when it's on sale, McCall's 8529. Let's go ahead and talk fabric for McCall's 8529. So in terms of fabric, you can use gabardine, tweeds, wool blends, just name a few. If you are doing view C, which is the contrast, you will need some crepe back satin or satin fabric. You're going to need some lining fabric to line this dress. You're also going to need some lightweight fusible interfacing. Let's talk about the notions. So in terms of the notions, all views have a zipper that you're going to need, which is a 22-inch invisible zipper. Optional shoulder pads if you choose to do that. View A, you're going to need two 1-inch buttons. View B, you're going to need some braided trim if you decide to do that trim. Of course, that is optional as well. And C, you will need some trim if you decide to do the trim as well. In terms of finished garment measurements, the finished garment measurements is on the inside of the envelope. So make sure if you get this pattern, make sure you check out those finished garment measurements as well. Once again, this is 85.29. Moving over to the next pattern. The next pattern is 85.30. And this pattern is a Mrs. Top pattern. This reminds me of Simplicity 9606 that I have in my stash. I just have not pulled it out. Now, anytime you see the QR code, that means that there will be a sew along for the pattern. Now, just to kind of tell you which ones we'll have sew alongs for, because I forgot to mention this at the very beginning of this video, Brandi Jones pattern 8525 will have a sew along for that pattern as well. And this one right here, 8530, that we're discussing right now, will have a sew along for this. So stay tuned for that sew along. But 8530 is a bias cut pullover top. It has sleeve variations, deep V neckline with gathers above the bust. And then it also features an invisible side zipper. But if you do not want that side zipper, because I do not like zippers on the side of my top, you can remove that side zipper and move it to the back as well. And just make sure that instead of cutting the back on the fold, you would need to cut separate and extend that by 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. So it also features the narrow hem. View A and View C have a scalloped lace trim on the neckline and the bodice. And then View C also have long sleeves with ribbon ties at the waist as the wrist. I'm sorry, not the waist, the wrist. All right. Now this is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, it's 2 pattern envelopes. The first one is 8 to 16 and the second one is 18 to 26 on the second pattern. Let's talk fabric. So in terms of fabric, you could use Chez Muse, you could use crepe, you could use challis. I would say any type of flowy, drapey, silky fabric would work best for this pattern. In terms of notions for all views, you're going to need a minimum of a 12-inch invisible zipper. You're going to need some scallop lace trim if you are doing View A or View C. You're going to need some single fold bias tape if you are doing View A as well, and you're going to need some satin ribbon if you are doing View C. In terms of the finished garment measurement for all views, 35.5 minimum all the way up to 52. So a huge size range for this one as well. But once again, it's 85.30 for this pattern. Moving over to the next pattern is 85.31. Now this pattern is a kind of like a millennium or Y2K inspired flared pants. It have a wide waistband, belt loops with button details, a fly front zipper, and pocket variations. Now this pattern reminds me of a pattern that Mimi G did a while ago, which is McCall's 8007 for that pattern. And I have not gotten around to doing that pattern, but it's very, very similar. The only difference is this pattern does not have that U shape at the back of your butt area, and it does not have cargo style floating pockets, or 3D pockets is what some people call them. But that's about the only difference for this one. It's another pattern that this pattern is similar to as well, but I'm very interested in this pattern and I will be picking it up as well. Let's talk sizing. So in terms of pattern sizing, there's 2 envelopes, 8 to 16 and 18 to 26 on this pattern. I think I mentioned that this is an average to sew pattern, but let's go ahead and talk fabric. So in terms of fabric, I'm gonna say some sturdy fabric like your denim, your twill, your corduroy, just to name a few. You're gonna need some interfacing for that waistband. In terms of notions, you're gonna need a 7-inch all-purpose exposed zipper. So do not try to use a invisible zipper for your fly front, okay? It's not gonna zip up. It's gonna zip up and down, but you're not gonna be able to get in and out of your pants, all right? So don't do that. You're also gonna need 6 5/8-inch buttons for this. In terms of finished garment measurements, check that hip. The hip measures between 35, the smallest side, 35-inch finished hip, all the way up to 51.5. So make sure you measure the pattern pieces for sure. Once again, it's 85.31 and I will be picking up this pattern. Moving over to the next pattern, it's 85.32. And this pattern is a utility jacket and vest. Now this pattern is a one size fit all, which is extra small to extra, extra large. And when I say one size fit all, I'm not saying like it's one size that's gonna fit everyone. It's one pattern envelope. And that one pattern envelope is size extra small to extra, extra large. Now this jacket have a hood with snap, long sleeves with snap opening at the wrist. It features a zipper front closure and pocket variation. Now view B has drawstrings at the hem. The vest has drop shoulders, snaps over the zipper opening, and a front accordion pocket with welts as well. Now this pattern reminds me of a few patterns. So two patterns, I should say. So the first pattern that this one reminds me of was a men's pattern that came out, I want to say fall winter of last year, and that pattern is Simplicity 9651. Now the reason why I am highlighting this pattern as a similarity is because even though it has a V on the pattern, you know, like a V neck shape, it has kind of like the floating pockets, you know, at the bottom. It on the bust area, it has the regular pockets as well. So that's why I thought this one was, you know, similar. Now this is an average toe pattern. Another pattern that this pattern reminds me of is Mimi G pattern, where her and Norris did kind of like a parka or anorak jacket. And that pattern is Simplicity 9052. Now that pattern have like a detachable hood. It has, you know, the pockets, you know, at the bottom and at the bust. It does have kind of like that placket area as well. So it's very similar to that as well. So I wanted to, you know, highlight that pattern as well. Let's talk the sizing, which is extra small to extra, extra large on McCall's 8532. Let's talk fabric for this pattern. So in terms of fabric, you can use cotton blends, denim, nylon, or twill, just to name a few. You're going to need some lining fabric for this one if you are doing view B or view C. You're going to need some lightweight fusible interfacing. Now, in terms of notions, all view, you're going to need a 22-inch separating zipper. Now, it does not tell you this, but you're going to need a separating zipper, okay, for this jacket or vest. So do not use a all-purpose or exposed zipper. You need a separating zipper. In addition, if you are doing view A, you need the zipper to be 28 inches so view A, you're going to need 22-inch separating zipper. View B and view C, because it's longer, you're going to need 28 inches for that separating zipper. View A, you're going to need 6 half-inch heavy-duty snaps. And then if you're doing view B, you're going to need 14 half-inch heavy-duty snaps, and then also some drawstring cording. Now, view C, you're going to need a total of 8 half-inch heavy-duty snaps and a pack of single-fold bias tape. And make sure that single-fold bias tape is minimum half of an inch wide, okay? In terms of finished garment measurement for the bust, 41 to 58.5 inches for both the bust and the waist. So it's very boxy if you look at it as well. Once again, this pattern is 8532. Moving over to the next pattern is 8533, and this is a trendy boleros and jacket with seaming details. It have a white collar. I love that. Optional shoulder pads if you want to do that. Now view B have a contrast, okay, on it, and then view A and view B have open front. So I like that. It has an open front, and then view C have a sew-on snap closure to keep it closed. Now let's talk patterns. This is an average to sew pattern. You know, in terms of pattern rating, it's average to sew. In terms of the pattern sizing, it's 2 envelope, 8 to 16 and 18 to 26 on the second envelope. Now this pattern right here, I like this pattern. I didn't see that it was similar to anything that I currently have seen already, but it is a pattern that's similar, but it doesn't have that collar. I forgot the pattern number, so I'm gonna skip over as if I never mentioned that, but it is a McCall's pattern in the 7900 era, okay? I just don't remember the number as I'm speaking right now. Let's talk fabric. So in terms of fabric for this pattern, you can use cotton blends, denim, wool, velvet, just to name a few. In terms of lining, you're going to need some lining fabric and some lightweight fusible interfacing as well. In terms of notions, for all of you, you're going to need a 1/2 inch shoulder pads, which is optional. And then if you do view C, you're going to need 3 1/2 inch sew-on snaps. Now, one thing I will mention is this is a no notion pattern. If you are doing view A or view B and you do not put shoulder pads in, like I mentioned, shoulder pads are optional. However, if you are doing view C, it could still be no notion if you decide not to do the snaps and just have it open, okay? So write this down. This can be a no notion pattern. So in terms of the finished garment measurement, it's on the inside of the envelope. So make sure if you pick up the paper pattern, make sure you open the paper pattern in store, check the finished garment measurement, check to make sure you have the right, and when I say right, you have the instructions and the right pattern for that pattern envelope. Do not leave the store without checking. You're welcome. All right, so this is 8533. Moving over to the next pattern, which is 8534. Now this is a knit jumpsuit, okay? Now this is a flare leg jumpsuit with lined bodice. It have crossover or scoop front halter neckline. It has elastic at the waist. It also features an invisible zipper closure and a narrow hem. So view B is a jumpsuit that have contrast bodice, okay? So you could contrast that bodice for view B as well. Let's talk ratings. So this is an average sew pattern. In terms of sizing, 2 pattern envelopes, size 6 to 14, and then 16 to 24 on the second pattern envelope. There will be a sew along for this pattern as well because it has a QR code, so stay tuned for that. In terms of fabric, you're going to need any type of knit fabric of your choosing, and that lining needs to be tree code as well. All right. In terms of notions, you're going to need invisible zipper, minimum of 14 inches is what I'm going to say for view A. View B, you're going to B or C, you're going to need 9 inches for that invisible zipper. You're going to need some elastic as well. And then of course, you're going to need like a swimwear buckle closure with a 1.5 inch opening, or 1 1/4, I would say, for that opening. In terms of the finished garment measurement for the bust, you have 28 to 43.5 inches. For the waist, 25 to 40.5 inches, and then hips is 29.5 to 45 inches. So make sure you are checking those finished garment measurements when you are picking the size that you need. I always say measure your pattern pieces before you cut them out. Okay? You're welcome. Let's go ahead and move over to the next pattern. The next pattern is 8535. There will be a sew along for this pattern as well. This is a Mrs. and Woman's nightgown in 2 lengths and a robe. Now this is a bias cut pullover nightgown in 2 lengths. It has straps, a deep V neckline with gathers above the bust, and a lace trim. The robe has long sleeves with lace trim. And then it also features pleats and gathers at the waist and a contrast sash, okay? In terms of pattern rating, it's an average to sew pattern. It comes in 2 pattern envelopes. The first one is 10 to 18, and the second one is 20W to 28W. Let's talk fabrics. So in terms of fabric, you can use challis, charmeuse, crepe, just to name a few. Anything flowy and silky would work for this pattern, all right? But once again, this is 8535. Moving over to the next pattern, and sorry to say I will not be picking up 35. 8535 at all. Next pattern I will not be picking up either is 8536. Now this is a pair of men's shorts and pants. Now it features cargo style shorts and pants. It have pocket variations, waistband with belt loops, a fly front zipper, and a button closure. So view A is your shorts. It have the hem band as well. And then view B and view C are your pants. Now I just not feeling this one at all. My husband definitely wouldn't wear it, okay? It is an average to sew pattern. Let's talk sizes. So it's 2 pattern envelopes. The first one is 34 to 42, and the second one is 44 to 52 on that pattern. Let's talk fabrics. So in terms of fabrics, you can use cotton blends, denim, or twill, just to name a few. In terms of notions, there's only two things you're gonna need. You're gonna need a 7-inch all-purpose exposed zipper and 1 3/4 inch button as well. Check the waist and the hip measurement when you pick up this pattern, although it's wide legs, but there's a huge size range in terms of the waist and the hips, all right? So make sure you check that as well. But once again, it's 85-36. Moving over to the next pattern. Now I am skipping 37, 38, 39. I'm sorry, 37 and 38 because those are kids' patterns, but let's go ahead and move over to 85-39. So 85-39 is a Laura Ashley pattern. This is a 1980s Laura Ashley pattern. So this one is a dress pattern. Dress A and dress B comes with or without short sleeves. It has a collar with ties. It is a lined bodice with front and back princess seaming, side zipper closure, a full gathered skirt, and side seam pockets, okay? So this is a vintage reproduction pattern as well. So the instructions may be a little outdated, but definitely give this pattern a try if you are into vintage patterns. Now I know my girl Julie, she is into vintage patterns at the Created Curvy, so I would love to see her make it. I'm gonna tag her just to see if she can make this pattern up for me, okay? But you know, I think this is a cute pattern, but I'm not like a big, huge vintage girly. And I know a lot of my vintage girlies will completely, you know, smash this pattern, all right? But let's talk fabrics. So in terms of fabrics for this pattern, you could use many different fabrics. You could use cotton, you could use challis, you could use chambray, crepe, just to name a few, gingham. The only notion that you're gonna need is a 14-inch zipper. Now, I'm gonna say it's probably an invisible zipper, but you could definitely use a all-purpose exposed zipper. I don't know if I told you about sizing, but it's 2 pattern envelopes, 6-14 and 16-24 on the second pattern envelope, all right? But once again, it's 85-39. Moving over to the next pattern, another Laura Ashley 1980s pattern. Now this one is a top and skirt pattern. It's a pullover top. View A or view B has the tucked sailor collar, dicky and necktie, above elbow length sleeves with pleated cap and pleated band, okay? So top A has contrast collar and sleeve band. It also features a full gathered skirt. It has shaped button waistband, pockets inside front seams of your skirt, and then you also have a back zipper closure. It is another vintage reproduction pattern by Laura Ashley. It is an average to sew pattern. In terms of sizing, it's 2 pattern envelopes. The first one is 6-14, and the second one is 16-24 on the second envelope. Let's talk fabrics. So in terms of fabric, of course, your cottons, cotton blends, your lightweight wool crepe, your sheer sucker, just to name a few there. You're gonna need some form of contrast fabric of your choosing, solids or prints, whichever one you choose, but it's highly recommend you use solid color fabric for your contrast in your sleeve band. In addition, you're gonna need some interfacing. In terms of notion, for your top, you're gonna need only 3 snaps. And then for the skirt, you're gonna need a 7-inch all-purpose or exposed zipper and 1/2 inch button as well, all right? But once again, this is 85-40. Moving over to the next pattern is 85-41. This is a Mrs. jacket from vintage 1980s pattern. Now this pattern does remind me of a pattern that I have in my stash, and it's Butterick 4862. It is an old pattern as well. I'm gonna put it up on the screen so you're able to see that as well. But this is a line fitted jacket. It has shaped seaming, full length sleeves with gathered cape or gathered cap at the shoulder area. Jacket A has a standing collar, and B with braid trim have unpressed pleats with insets and button front closure. Now, when it comes to jacket C, you have a reversible and decorative flap, and view D has a notch collar as well and features a peplum there. And for view D, it also features a frog closure to keep it closed. It is a vintage reproduction pattern. It is an average to sew pattern. So let's talk sizing. So this pattern does not, it's not size inclusive. It's only one pattern envelope and it's size 6 to 16. Once again, it is a reproduction pattern. So I'm going to say back in those days, I guess they figured that all the ladies were a lot smaller. I don't want to say skinny. I want to say a lot smaller instead of, you know, now you have all size range. Okay. So we have our plus girlies. We have our thick girly like Mumois. And then you have your itty bitty petite, you know, women. But back then, I guess a lot of the ladies, you know, in the early 60s, 70s, 80s were more on the petite side. So this pattern only ranged from 6 to 16. I'm on the fence on if I'm going to get it, just to be 100% honest. But once again, this pattern is 8542. And the last pattern that McCall's dropped for fall 2024 is 8542. And this pattern is a missus jacket, skirt, and pant patterns from vintage 1970s. Now this features a yoked jacket. It has collar, patch pocket, sleeves gathered into the button cuff. So the sleeve has a button on there, which is a cuff, and a belt, okay? Now, view A, which is the skirt, it's a gored skirt in 3 different lengths. And then you have the flared pants that have a back zipper, which is view D. Okay. Once again, it is a vintage reproduction pattern. It is an average to sew. In terms of sizing, once again, it's not size inclusive. The only pattern envelope would be size 6 to 16 on this pattern. Now, let's talk fabric. So in terms of fabric, you can use challis, cotton blends, broadcloth fabric, lightweight corduroy, gabardine, just to name a few. You're going to need some interfacing. Now, in terms of all views, you're going to need some seam binding, okay? For the jacket, you're going to need 2 half-inch buttons. And then for the skirt and the pants, you're going to need a 7-inch all-purpose exposed zipper and 2 hook and eye closures for this one. Make sure you check the inside of the pattern envelope in order to see those finished garment measurements if you decide to get this pattern, all right? Well, once again, that's 8542. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned as I'm going to be sharing the Know Me patterns as well as the Know Me Fall 2024 patterns, as well as the Vogue Winter 2024 patterns that dropped as well. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. And if this video was educational, inspiring, and fun, please do not forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, also smash that notification bell so you are notified every time your girl uploads a new video. So I'll catch you in the next video. And as always, keep sewing.
Yeah, I got a story to tell. I know they want me to fail. If they throw me into a cell, I know wife she paying the bill. Cause I can afford to be quiet. My city is dying and children are crying. Be alert, not devour. The enemy's prowling you just like a lion. But we got the keys, I promise you. Hold on to the peace inside of you. No, I'm not alone. You're not alone. You got an army who follows you. It's time to rise up, lift your eyes up. Yeah, hope is on the way.